Good morning. How are you? Happy Tuesday. Today we are reading more from Who Was Thomas Jefferson? Remember, third president of the United States, wrote the Declaration of Independence. It is written by Dennis Brendel Frayden, illustrated by John O'Brien. Chapter 2. Tom moved to Williamsburg in the spring of 1760. This city near the coast was Virginia's capital and the home to the College of William and Mary. Tom loved college from the start. He was hungry for knowledge and enjoyed studying late into the night. One professor, William Small, befriended him. In turn, Dr. Small introduced him to his friends George Wythe and Francis Fuqua. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. Wythe was a noted lawyer. Fuqua was the colonial governor of Virginia for Great Britain. And there's a little drawing of the College of William and Mary. Fuqua often invited Small, Wythe, and Jefferson to dine, to eat, at the governor's palace. Sometimes the red-haired college student played his violin at concerts hosted by the governor. Tom graduated in 1762 after just 2 years. Now he had time to think about a career. Law appealed to him. In those days, young men, no women lawyers yet, that changed, they studied with established attorneys. After a while, the young men would take a test. They would study with the lawyer and then take a test. And if they passed the test, then they would become a lawyer. Tom began studying under George Wythe. He couldn't have had a better teacher. In colonial days, way back then, lawyers generally had poor reputations. That means people didn't think very highly of them. A few colonies even had laws preventing lawyers from entering their borders. Couldn't even go into the state. Wow. Wythe, however, was famous for his honesty. If he thought a person was in the wrong or lying, he wouldn't take the case. Wythe did not go easy on Tom, even though they were friends. Tom studied with George Wythe for 5 years. In comparison, Tom's friend Patrick Henry studied for just a few months before becoming a lawyer. Even today, law schools generally require just 3 years of study after college. One reason for Tom working so long with Wythe was because Wythe was a treasury of legal knowledge. He was very, very smart. He had lots of knowledge. Another reason was that he liked Mr. Wythe. He called Wythe, who was 17 years older than himself, my second father. In 1767, Jefferson became a lawyer, and he began to practice law near Shadwell, where he had grown up. And he also practiced in Williamsburg. That's the capital of Virginia. George Wythe had taught Tom well. His first year, the 24-year-old attorney handled 67 cases. The second year, 115 cases, and then about 200 the next year. His problem was that he didn't really press his clients to pay him. So in his first 6 years as an attorney, he only made a portion of what he should have been making. Nice guy, I guess. Tom also became interested in politics. That means how the government is run and so forth. In 1769, he ran for and won a seat in the House of Burgesses. This was Virginia's legislature. Those are the lawmakers. It was America's oldest lawmaking body, made up of people who were elected, just like we elect our lawmakers. Jefferson served in the House of Burgesses until the American Revolution ended colonial government. American Revolution, when we fought with Great Britain for our freedom. And here are some pictures. This is about the House of Burgesses. Let's read what that says. The Virginia House of Burgesses met to decide local laws. Its historic first meeting took place in Jamestown in 1619, more than 100 years before the story about Jefferson. The House of Burgesses played a key role in the American Revolution. In the 1760s and 1770s, a few years before we wanted our independence from Great Britain, its members began to challenge decisions made by the royal governor of Virginia. The Burgesses, as they were called, helped spur the united fight for freedom throughout the 13 colonies. So even though they were lawmakers, they were going, this is what we need to do. We need to be a free country. Law and politics weren't the only things on Thomas's mind. His family home burned down in 1770. He was away from home at that time, and when he found out about it, and he found out that his relatives were safe, he asked if everything was lost. He found out that his fiddle, his violin was still there. Now, the year of the fire, he began building a new home that he had designed, and that house is still standing. With his slaves doing the work, remember, he got slaves from his father. 35-room mansion. Can you imagine having 35 rooms? Was built on a hill 4 miles from Shadwell, near the town of Charlottesville. He called it Monticello. It means little mountain in Italian. Now, he had a girlfriend named Rebecca, but he was really shy. He couldn't really even tell her how he felt. And just about the time he thought he was going to be able to tell her, she married another man. So, and this is Monticello. And as I said, it's still there today. I would love to go there. Now, Tom was very upset about the girlfriend marrying somebody else. It took him several years to get over his broken heart. And then in 1770, he met Martha Wales Skelton. She was very beautiful. They fell in love, and he visited her father's plantation, the forest, to get to know her. Now, they shared a love of music. They sang together. He played the violin while she played the harpsichord, which is kind of like a piano. On New Year's Day in 1772, they were married at her family home. The party lasted more than 2 weeks. That's quite a party, isn't it? On January 18th, they set out to go to Monticello, and there was a really bad snowstorm, a blizzard. They had 3 feet of snow. Oh my goodness. They had to finish getting to Monticello on horseback because they had been in a buggy. They had a lot of sadness in their marriage. They had some daughters that died. He had 2 of them lived, Patsy and Maria. And that is where I'm going to end our story on Thomas Jefferson. Now, yesterday you learned about 2 different, Native American tribes, the Teton Sioux and the Yankton Sioux. The Yankton Sioux were very helpful. They helped guide Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery, their group. And then they go, ooh, you're getting into Teton Sioux territory, and we can't help you. So let's remember what we learned about the Teton Sioux. Now remember, President Jefferson wanted Lewis and Clark to become friends with Native Americans. The Teton Sioux were not interested in trading. They didn't want Lewis and Clark on their land. One of the best hunters from the Corps of Discovery, his name was John, was tracking an animal, got off of his horse so he could look at the tracks the animal had made, and the Teton Sioux stole his horse. Clark said, "We'll not speak with you until you give us the horse back." And then, remember, there were 200 of the Teton Sioux, all armed with arrows, bows and arrows. And they spread out around the riverbank. And remember, Lewis reminded everybody else, we're supposed to be friends. We're supposed to be friends. And then Clark gave them some gifts. And then the Teton Sioux goes, "Not good enough. We want better gifts." Can you imagine saying that to somebody who gives you a present? Oh my goodness. But Clark knew that the Teton Sioux honored courage. So he says, this is the way it's going to be. And the Teton Sioux would actually try to get a boat. And Clark says, release the boat. Remember hearing about that yesterday? And then they kind of settled down after that and decided that that everybody was going to be nice to each other. Oh my goodness. Today we are learning about two other Native American tribes, the Mandan and the Hidatsa. Now, Lewis and Clark needed lots of people traveling with them to help them. They needed people who could speak other languages besides English, what we speak. Why do you think that is? Well, some of the people who were helping them couldn't speak English. For instance, one gentleman could only speak French. So Lewis and Clark couldn't talk to him because they spoke two different languages. So they needed an interpreter or a translator, somebody who could talk both languages and tell the other one what the other one was speaking. So here's our purpose for listening. Learn about who they hired to help as a guide and as translator. But before you listen to the read aloud, let's go over the vocabulary. Our first word is permanent. Say permanent. That means lasting a long time and not changing in place or condition. Permanent marker. You know about permanent markers. Paint leaves a permanent stain on a carpet. That's our example sentence. Plunged. Plunge. Say plunged. Plunged is when you fall or drop quickly. The diver plunged into the pool. Protection, something that keeps you safe. Here's our example sentence. The hikers use sunscreen for protection against the sun's rays. Skilled is our next one, next to the last one. Skilled means you are trained to do something or you're being good at something. Here's our example sentence. Her dream was to become a skilled painter. And translate means to change words from one language into another. Now, if your family doesn't speak English and Mrs. Frieder unfortunately only speaks English, then I have to have help with somebody who speaks the same language as your family. And we've done quite a bit of that through the phone when I've made my phone calls. Some parents don't speak English or speak English, still learning to speak English. So I have to have somebody. So I call that person, the helper, call the helper and tell her what I want. And then that helper calls your family. Not everybody needs that, of course. And so whatever I say, the helper, the interpreter, says my words in the language of your family and so forth. But that's what we're learning about. Who helped Lewis and Clark doing that and as guides, and that's what our lesson is today. It's called Sacagawea. Fascinating. She has, from the time I was little, has always fascinated me. Remember we learned about the word fascinated. I will see you tomorrow. Happy Tuesday. I love you. Bye.